Ever heard of Bitcoin being volatile? What if I told you there are cryptocurrencies that attempt to do the exact opposite? Let's mine deep. The name gives it away, stablecoins, aiming to keep their prices steady and solid. The actual definition is a cryptocurrency whose value is tied to an outside asset like the US dollar or gold. This tie or bond that they have has a name, and it's a peg. And that peg is what stabilizes the price of the stablecoins. Similarly, the US dollar used to be pegged to gold. After Bretton Woods and until President Nixon officially shut the gold window in 1971,
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
This peg was used to ensure that the governments weren't able to create dollars out of thin air, inflating the supply and making them less valuable. In other words, stablecoins are a one-to-one representation of other assets, except they're on the blockchain. They're advertised as having a minimal volatility and a way for users to be their own banks. Unfortunately, stablecoins don't fix any of the issues of the underlying fiat and rely on centralized and trusted issuers just like a traditional currency. But they're sold as a stable benchmark, safe from risky pricey action. But it's not like we don't know the dollar is inflating away and has many of its own issues due to wicked central bankers. How do stablecoins actually work? There are 4 different types. The fiat-backed are pegged by a global currency. The fiat collateral must always be in a one-to-one proportion to the number of coins issued. For example, the company Tether has a US dollar pegged stablecoin called the USDT at a one-to-one ratio to the US dollar, meaning 1 USDT equals 1 USD. Commodity-backed have collateral with physical assets like metals, oils, and real estate. Both fiat and commodity-backed stablecoins require a central issuer to provide the collateral, meaning they're not 100% decentralized. Crypto-backed are backed by using smart contracts instead of relying on central issuers, and they use other cryptocurrencies as collateral. Algorithmic stablecoins, like the name, use a complex system of algorithms and smart contracts to manage the supply of the tokens and circulating control of the price. When the price of this stablecoin goes down and below its peg, they're burned from the circulating supply, creating demand and raising the price. And when the tokens go above the price, tokens are minted into circulation, pulling back the price. You can think of the Terra Luna collapse last fall as a prime example. So why should you care? Because their weakness is that they're at the mercy of the regulators. Stablecoins are marked as a tool to bank the unbanked. In reality, they're just charging a fee to use the bank account of some private company. So not only do you have the risk of regulators clamping down on you or the stablecoin issuer, you also have an additional risk of the stablecoin issuer rugging you by printing more stablecoins than the dollars, commodities, and gold supposedly backing them. You also have the risk of stablecoin issuers blacklisting your addresses at the whim of regulators, governments, or even the private corporations running the payment rails. And of course, not your keys, not your coins. You have the risk of the stablecoin issuer running off with the real assets that they have backing their stablecoin, leaving you with the token that is worthless. While all of this may be true, it is hard to deny the market saturation of stablecoins across the globe today. But should Bitcoiners be supporting and building out rails to further dollarize the planet? Or should we create a novel instruments backed by Bitcoin to succeed as Satoshi's quest to remove the state from our money? Don't miss Mark Goodwin Backstage. How do you see the Bitcoin dollar evolving?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think we are at a precipice of a huge, I use this phrase a lot, but Cambrian explosion of highly regulated stablecoins. I just did an interview with Walter, the head of strategy at Paxos, talking about PayPal stablecoin, and he kind of, had kind of the same framework as me. That really all that matters is the Bitcoin and the dollar. And we're going to see highly regulated stablecoins, by these private capital institutions and these banks, and kind of neobanks like PayPal and like JP Morgan. And we're going to see the American Big Four really step up and I think take the market share away from maybe less regulated models like Tether or USDC. And they're really going to flow to kind of these centralized places. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Could you explain the concept of the Bitcoin dollar for those that don't know what it really is?
The idea and the reason why it's called the Bitcoin dollar is to sort of set kind of this like analog sort of metaphor to the petrodollar. The petrodollar was the system that was set up, post the gold window in the United States, where we went and actually, through military force, basically established a monopoly on the ins and outs of the petrol trade, of the oil trade. So any country in Asia or in Europe that wanted to buy oil from, mostly Saudi Arabia, but from the whole Middle East, they had to buy dollars first. And so it created this demand for dollars sort of unnaturally, because really the demand was for this energy commodity that was oil that these countries needed to industrialize. I'm seeing kind of a similar thing be set up here, where we're seeing, the American banking coalition basically setting up and establishing a very similar type of monopoly in terms of market share volume and trading pair volume of US dollar denominated trading pairs against Bitcoin. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, the easiest way to do it is to use dollars to buy Bitcoin. And I think that's going to continue to happen. And that's going to, just continue to be a big part of Bitcoin's the next decade of Bitcoin, I think, will be really about how it interacts with the dollar system. And I think Bitcoiners should be wary of it. I really look at the US government as sort of being, the biggest terrorist organization in the world. And by perpetuating the treasury system and by allowing Bitcoin to be tethered to the dollar, these powers get to continue their game. And I think we really have a chance here with Bitcoin, maybe not to replace the dollar as a currency, but to replace the treasuries that back the dollar as the reserve asset of a new financial system.
How do you think stablecoins and potentially a Bitcoin dollar will influence Bitcoin's position as a store of value versus a medium of exchange?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like one of the big questions when talking about stablecoins and Bitcoin. A lot of people use this sort of ism of like, stablecoins bank the unbanked. And there's all these people out there that need US dollar bank accounts and they can't get them. And so, there's a lot of framing about stablecoins somehow being this altruistic or human rights technology, and I just reject that completely. These are private corporations, private banks. This is not giving access to bank accounts to, quote unquote, the third world. This is charging the third world to use your bank account. And we've seen some of these banks that hold this paper for some of these big stablecoin providers, go under. We've seen that. Circle held $3.3 billion in SVB, and that went under. So there's a lot of counterparty risk to stablecoins, and this idea that they can be decentralized while still holding treasuries in a bank, I really reject. But there's a lot of interesting things that can be built. You can build stable channels. You can use stable sats. You can maybe use Chaumian and eCash to create dollar instruments that act like the dollar, that contain the idea of the dollar, but aren't actually backed by treasuries and aren't actually perpetuating this military-industrial complex that I think is our biggest enemy on the earth.
What would you say some of the hurdles or challenges are coming for the adoption of a Bitcoin dollar?
Well, again, it's not necessarily like I want to, I would say the Bitcoin dollar theory is or whatever is kind of a warning. I don't necessarily want to see this happen, but I think all the signs are there that these huge banks are really about to step into the stablecoin game, and they want to see the dollar globalized. They want to see the dollar spread everywhere, and with high velocity. And they want to see, entities like Tether buying up, $70+ billion of treasuries, and now they hold more treasuries than like countries do. Well, why is that happening? I am a free market capitalist. Like I don't reject the free banking ideals. I think George Selgin, which is quoted in the white paper referenced in it, is correct. And I think you should be able to do whatever you want. But I think we should also think about what it is that we do. And so I don't want regulation to come in and destroy these things necessarily. I want people to make a really conscious choice about what instruments they use and what currencies they perpetuate. And I think if they really look at Bitcoin and know that it's not a finished product and it is an invention, and there are tools that can be built on top of it, and perhaps minor changes that can be made to the code, like covenants or something that can actually allow billions of people to self-custody their own UTXOs or open lightning channels in a self-custodial way, which I think will be a humongous state change to how humans interact with each other from a financial tool standpoint.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Who is Javier Milei, the Argentinian president that everyone is talking about?
Yo no me metí acá para estar guiando corderos. Yo me metí acá para despertar leones. ¡Quiero escucharlos rugir! ¡Viva la libertad!
While crazy, far-right, the Whig, controversial, the Lion, radical, and libertarian are some of the words used to describe him, who is he?
La mayoría de los argentinos queremos un cambio.
Before becoming president of Latin America's second largest economy, Javier led a multifaceted life. He was a soccer player in the 80s, an economist, and part of a rock and roll band called Everest. Later on, he rose to prominence as the leader of the political party La Libertad Avanza, Freedom Advances, and gained attention in politics for his provocative style. Now 53-year-old Milei identifies as an anarcho-capitalist and holds 2 postgraduate degrees, having graduated from the University of Belgrano. His professional journey includes roles as an economic advisor in banks and consulting firms, along with serving as the chief economist at Corporación América. Notably, he has authored and co-authored several books on economics. Milei identifies as a proponent of the economic liberalism and adheres to the Austrian school of economic thought, which advocates minimal government intervention in the economy and deregulation of the markets. Some of Milei's key proposals are as follows. He strongly advocates for dollarizing Argentina's economy and intends to shut down the central bank, holding it responsible for the country's high inflation.
Es la eliminación del Banco Central. La dolarización es una cuestión instrumental de última.
He advocates for dramatic cuts in social spending, which is a controversial stance in a country with a history of social welfare programs. He has suggested cutting ties with Argentina's 2 most important trade partners, Brazil and China, because he doesn't like communist countries.
De hecho, no solo no voy a hacer negocios con China, no voy a hacer negocios con ningún comunista.
Also supports repealing the abortion law and deregulating the arms market.
Por lo tanto, el aborto es un asesinato agravado por el vínculo y por la diferencial de fuerzas.
He has made bold statements about public figures.
But the Pope, you believe the Pope has an affinity for Raúl Castro?
Sí, exacto. Sí, tiene afinidad por los comunistas asesinos. De hecho, no los condena. Es decir, es bastante condescendiente con ellos. Y es también condescendiente con la dictadura venezolana.
And might be planning to convert to Judaism. His campaign was marked by symbolic acts, such as brandishing a chainsaw to symbolize the fiscal adjustments he deems necessary. And to promote the idea of dollarization, he uses a giant $100 bill featuring his face. Some critics view Milei as an unstable leader for an economical unstable country, while others view him as the salvation to Argentina's never-ending inflation, corruption, rising state debts, and looming recession. But you know what? Only time will tell. And you keep stacking that Bitcoin stack.